Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Dan Hiscock, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Captain Matthew Malcolm. This evening, we warmly welcome the family of Private James Coverlid, whose story will be told shortly. We are honoured to acknowledge Mr. Assad Dargam, Member of the Lebanese Parliament, accompanied by His Excellency Mr. Milad Raad, Ambassador of Lebanon, and Mrs. Rula Azar, and the accompanying delegation. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Service Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors and students on behalf of Toowoomba Christian College from Highfields, Queensland. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If you wish to and you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read just one of the stories behind those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private James Coverlid. James Coverlid was born around 1895 in the port city of Fremantle, Western Australia. Known as Jim, he was the eldest of 8 children born to Ernest and Isabella Coverlid. He received his education at Fremantle Boys' School before his family moved to the eastern suburbs of Adelaide around Kensington and Norwood. There, Jim gained employment as an ironmonger, working in a store for Messrs. G.P. Harris Scarfe & Co. At the outbreak of the war in 1914, Jim was 19 years old, too young to enlist without his parents' consent. Desperate to volunteer, he gained permission from his parents and proceeded to Morphettville, where he enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 8th of October 1914. Allocated to reinforcements of the 16th Battalion, after a short period of training, he embarked for active service from Adelaide on board the troopship Ceramic in December 1914. He arrived in Egypt in February 1915 as his unit was preparing to go into battle at Gallipoli. Private Jim Coverlid took part in the Gallipoli landing with his battalion on the afternoon of the 25th of April 1915. Surviving the landing unscathed, Jim spent the following weeks establishing and defending the front lines with his battalion. Under constant danger from shelling, rifle fire and snipers, Jim's introduction to the war was not easy. On the 2nd of May 1915, the enemy began heavily bombarding the British trenches. Manning their positions in preparation for an attack, the men were subject to heavy machine gun and rifle fire as they attempted to hold the line. During this attack, less than 10 days after his arrival on the peninsula, Private Jim Coverlid went missing in action. By the end of 1915, his fate was still unknown, and his family were anxious for news of him. All letters were returned to his family marked "killed in action" or "unable to trace." In December, his father enlisted for active service. Lying about his age, Ernest Coverlid told the enlisting officer he was 45 years old and joined the 11th Field Company Engineers as a sapper. More than a year after Jim Coverlid's disappearance on the 13th of May 1916, a court of inquiry determined that he had been killed in action during the attack on the 2nd of May 1915. His body was never recovered from the battlefield. His father embarked for service 2 weeks later, carrying the news that his son was dead. Local newspapers reported Jim Coverlid's death, saying, "He possessed a bright and cheerful disposition and was highly respected by a wide circle of friends." His family later placed a notice to their son and brother in the newspaper. "The last post does not sound for such as you, but God's reveille wakens you again." Private Jim Coverlid was 20 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private James Coverlid, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We'll leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.